Hi children! Well, today it's breakup day, so this is going to be our last story for a while. And I want you to remember that while it's the holidays, you're going to enjoy some lovely time being with your families, playing and playing and playing and playing. And remember, not too much screen time. I know we've had quite a lot of screen time with our remote learning program, but now is a time for you to do lots and lots of other things. So I hope you're going to have fun. I will miss you, but let's get on with the story before we start the holidays. Jelly beans for giants. A boy called George had a breathtaking thought that giants might really exist. We just need a beanstalk, George said to his dog, and a gift that a giant can't resist. So George poured some jelly beans into his bag, but he kept one to plant in a pot. He watered the bean, and the very next day, a beanstalk had grown quite a lot. It's ginormous, George cheered. Come on, Trixie, let's go. He heaved up his bag filled with treats. The giant is bound to be friendly, said George. Even big people love to get sweets. As Trixie and George clambered higher and higher, they heard a voice sing loud and strong. Could that be a giant? George said to his dog. But a pixie was singing that song. If you're looking for giants, the pixie told George, you'll need to keep climbing up high. Then she plucked something fluffy and pink from a branch. And she grinned. But it's quicker to fly. George took a small bite, then cried, Candy floss, yum! Here, Trixie, there's plenty to share. They guzzled up more until, to their surprise, they floated up into the air. We're flying, whooped George as they rose up and up. Now we'll track down a giant in a flash. But all of a sudden, the magic ran out, and they fell with a whoops and a crash. Ouch, George complained, and he peered all around. There were huge purple fruits everywhere. These have to belong to a giant, said George. Then a horrible smell filled the air. Yuck, grimaced George, holding on to his nose. A giant smells worse than you'd think. The whole beanstalk shook as loud footsteps approached. It's a troll, exclaimed George. What a stink! When the troll spotted George, he held up a large spoon and waved it towards a huge pot. Oh, Trixie, he wants us for lunch, stammered George. Oh, no, boomed the troll. I do not. I'm harvesting grumpkins, he said with a grin, to put in my fine grumpkin stew. You must come and taste it. My cooking is great. And he held out a ladle of goo. George sniffed the troll's stew, and he pulled a grim face. The steaming hot gunk made him wheeze. The troll put a sprinkle of pepper on top, then let out a whopping big sneeze. They shot up the beanstalk, propelled by the blast, and were covered in gunge, thick and green. They came down to land with an almighty bounce on what seemed like a huge trampoline. This has to belong to a giant, cheered George. At last, we're having some luck. But he looked down and saw that his feet couldn't move. and that he and his dog were now stuck. "This isn't a trampoline," Trixie said George. "And what is that scuffling sound?" Then 8 gangly legs tiptoed onto the web as Trixie and George spun around. "A huge hairy spider," George stammered. "Oh no, are you going to eat us for tea?" "Of course not," the spider laughed, scurrying up. "I'll soon set the 2 of you free." But just as the spider was cutting them loose, the massive web started to sway. A loud, booming voice called out, "Fee, fi, fo, fum." And then, swoop, they were lifted away. George gaped at the hand that was holding them up, and 2 huge bright eyes twinkled back. "A giant!" George shouted. "I found you at last." But the giant said, "I need a snack." "Don't eat us!" cried George, and he reached for his bag. "I've brought you some jelly beans here." But his backpack was empty. "Oh no, they've all gone." Trixie started to tremble with fear. But just as George thought he'd be gobbled up right up, a sight made his eyes open wide. "What's in those green pods?" he called out to the giant. Could there be something tasty inside? George picked a large pod and he gave it a squeeze. Then he gasped at the rainbow within. Bright jelly beans tumbled out. "Yum!" said the giant. "My favourites!" he roared with a grin. The giant and George opened pod after pod, and out popped the colourful sweets. Then everyone climbed up the beanstalk to see, and they feasted on jelly bean treats. Children, that looks too delicious for words. What a fun place for them to be together, and how lovely that those colourful jelly beans rescued him from the giant. I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said at the beginning, have a wonderful holiday. I will miss you. Remember, not too much screen time. The best thing I'd love you to do is play and play and play. If you have a bike or a scooter or something to ride, play on that. Go for walks with your family if you can. If you have an animal, play with your animal, and have a lovely break. And I'll see you after the holidays. Bye for now.